I'm Abby, and I will be reading fiction. I want to say thank you to Mary Rockcastle because she's an awesome person. I also want to say thank you to all my fiction people. You know who you are. And a special thank you to Inkwell because you guys are awesome. Okay. So this one is for my senior sem project. So this is called The Death of Roanoke. The salty breeze right off the ocean no longer appealed to Margaret. After spending 6 months sailing to Roanoke, a small island championed by Sir Walter Raleigh, favorite of Queen Elizabeth, Margaret never wanted to see another ship or the ocean again. But there she was, perched atop one of the bluffs just down the trail from the fort that headed the pathetic settlement of Roanoke, watching the fishermen set their nets into the shallows. It was early morning, the sun had barely crested the horizon of the ocean, bright pink and lavender danced and rippled across the water. Margaret's husband Thomas had risen at his usual time, a few hours before sunrise, waking her as he rolled his body out of their small marriage bed, not nearly large enough for 2 adults. She had followed shortly after him. After breakfast, which she had badly burnt over their hearth, he had pecked her cheek, scratching it with his scruffy beard, and she had wandered down the path to the bluffs. Loud footfalls and giggling caught her attention. Over her shoulder, just inside the tree lines, were the Joneses, John and Jane. John was a fisherman, and Jane came from a family of fishermen. They had known each other for years. Jane released another giggle as her husband pressed her into the trunk of a white oak tree, his face hidden behind hers. She twirled a white bloodroot blossom between her fingers. Margaret looked away. She and Thomas had never been like that. They had only met twice before they were married, a mutual agreement between their parents having been decided. Her father was a cobbler, and although he boasted he made slippers for the Queen, Sir Walter Raleigh was the only noble he had ever met. It was Raleigh who suggested her father travel to Roanoke. Her father made his excuses, but readily volunteered his only child. Raleigh had been delighted, especially at the news Margaret's intended was a blacksmith. He had hurried from their own shop, eagerly seeking out Thomas in his family's workshop. She and Thomas were married 2 days before they set sail for Roanoke. Jane sat down beside her, her cheeks rosy. She had tucked the bloodroot into her braided bun. Jane was a year younger than Margaret, only 16. Margaret and the 16 other women had celebrated Jane's birthday halfway through the voyage. They had been on the island for over a year. Eleanor Dare, Governor White's daughter, had given birth 2 days after they landed. Virginia Dare was the first child born in the New World. Shouts from the beach below caught Margaret's attention. The fishermen, 10 of them in total, dropped their nets and were pointing to something in the water. Margaret stood, Jane beside her. "What in the world?" Jane asked. 3 of the men had waded into the water. One picked up something small and vaguely human-like. The other 2 began to drag the other body to shore. "Are those children?" Jane asked. Margaret turned to her. "Go back to the fort and get help." Jane stared down the beach. "Jane, go!" Margaret shoved her back towards the path. "Of course, the fort. Go!" Jane finally took off down the path, back towards the fort. Margaret walked to the edge of the bluff, gathered her skirts, and slowly slid down the sandy incline. Safely on the beach, she took off running towards the men. Jane had been right. The men had pulled bodies from the ocean. There were 2 brothers from the looks of them. They had the same shaped eyes and bone structure. One was clearly older than the younger than Thomas's 20 years, but older than her 16. He was conscious, brown eyes darting around fearfully. The other wasn't much older than 10, unconscious and barely breathing. Shouts from above drew Margaret's attention. Jane had returned with help. Women had brought blankets and wrapped the 2 boys up tight, and the boys were escorted up the bluffs and into the settlement.